Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 268 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Jae Hee. Jae Hee is Alina's mom. Now, Jae Hee comes to the podcast in a very unique way, and a way that kind of gets me excited. So she was recommended to listen to the Always Andy's Mom podcast by another listener. But this listener was not a bereaved parent. So I want you to listen for that story because I think that's pretty cool. And it just goes to show that the podcast can be useful to all sorts of people, not just bereaved parents. I would also like to invite all of you to start following me on social media if you don't. So we are making a very concerted effort to try to do a better job with our social media. Go to my Instagram if you are on Instagram and start following me at Always Andy's Mom, and you will see some pretty great videos that have been coming out recently. Also, if you feel so inclined and would like to donate to Always Andy's Mom, please go to the donate page on our website, andysmom.com, or go to givebutterbot.com and can give that way. I really do appreciate all of your gifts. It can help spread the message of hope and healing after child loss so much. Right now, though, I just want you to sit back and enjoy listening to Jae Hee, Alina's mom. Thank you so much, Jae Hee, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Alina.
I know. It's always a wonderful joy to be able to talk about our kids, isn't it?
Definitely is. And we don't really get enough opportunities to do that.
No, you are correct. We do not. So why don't you start out by just telling us about your special Alina?
Sure thing. So Alina was our second child. She was born in November of last year. After we found out we were pregnant with her, we moved from New York City to California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big move.
It is, yeah. And so she was born in California, and she was very different from our first child. She was very calm, she was very gentle, and really not like a really demanding baby. So
that's good.
I had the privilege of just spending every day with her during my maternity leave, and I just spent all day like touching her, kissing her, and just stroking her head all day, and it was just such a wonderful time. Yes.
So is it big brother or big sister that you had first?
Big sister. Yes.
Okay, so you had a second girl. What's the age difference between them?
2 years.
Oh, that's what we always did.
Yeah.
I call it the 2-year plan. We were on the 2-year plan.
Yeah, we were really excited about that.
What did 2-year-old big sister think then of the new baby?
She hated having a sister even now.
No.
Even now when we talk about Alina, and she knows Alina is her sister and she still talks about her. But when I said, she recently started saying like, oh, like somebody's mother. And then I said, yeah, I am your mother and I am also Alina's mother, because she talks about like sister, brother. And then she's like, no. She's like, no, you're my mother. You're not Alina's mother.
Because when is she 3 now? Is she 3 now or not yet?
She's like not 3.
Not quite 3 yet. Oh my. Yeah, that's
exactly also how she reacted when we brought Alina home. Yeah. That she was not happy about that, but
yes. This is a big change in my life, and I'm not sure I like it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a huge adjustment.
So she was just wonderful, and I just felt like a different person, like when we become mothers, we become different people.
Right.
And my soul was just connected to hers, and it was wonderful time, really. Like, I was the happiest person in the world, and I would look at my husband and ask him like, how are we so lucky to have these wonderful children? That was like every day for us. Yeah.
You felt so blessed, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, good. When she was born, and she seemed healthy at the time, right?
Yeah, she was born small because I give birth to small babies.
Mm-hmm.
So she was in the NICU for a little bit, but other than
Was
that,
she a little bit early too, or no?
yeah, she was induced because of, intrauterine growth restriction, which my first child also had. So I wasn't really worried about that because our first child is totally fine.
Right.
Yeah, so we took her home and she was developing normally.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw that when she turned about 3 months old, she started having trouble feeding. So we were taking her to the hospital, but she seemed fine, even though she wasn't eating very much. And that's pretty normal, I guess. So we were told it's going to be okay. But at 4-month checkup, we got diagnosed with hypotonia, low tone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I knew that, I was starting to feel like there was something terribly wrong with her because so I'm kind of a believer in natural order. So if a baby is not eating, like refusing to eat for a long time, I think that's very against the natural order, right? So I was like, there's something terribly wrong with her. And she was losing her milestones. She shouldn't be regressing in her development.
No, of course not.
So even though our pediatrician gave us a, neurologist appointment, that was 3 months out, I was thinking, I cannot wait that long. I switched doctor, and then that doctor was able to expedite it for 2 weeks. I couldn't wait 2 weeks. And, on day 3 of hearing the word hypotonia, we admitted her to the hospital.
Wow.
And actually, even at the hospital, at the pediatric unit, they thought that, oh, this is so strange because she looks totally fine. She doesn't seem very sick, but she does have extremely low tone. Yeah. And that is very strange, but they didn't think that it was a really serious problem.
It's so funny to hear you talk about it because it is such a struggle. I've got it, in my practice that I think of immediately when you talk about this. And we've gone to 2 different neurologists and genetics and whatever. And I'm like, there's something, right?
Yeah.
And we just can't get it pinned down. No one can come up with a diagnosis, no matter how many places I keep going to. I know in my heart of hearts there's something, and the parents do too.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're not trying, but
right.
It can be really hard to pin it down.
It is.
Especially something like just low tone. We are doing all sorts of therapies and all sorts of stuff. And fortunately, he's not losing milestones. He's just not,
Yeah.
It's not what you should be doing.
And sometimes some people take many, many years to get a diagnosis.
Yeah, I know.
And I think that we were really lucky to get a quick diagnosis because by the time we were admitted to the hospital, I had about 3 days to look into it. And I've researched all the stories of what people have done. And I had a plan. I knew which tests need to be done, and then I came to the hospital with those lists, and then we were able to do them really quickly. And one of that was a genetic test. Yeah. And it took us 2 weeks because it was a exome panel instead of the whole genome. So that it was expedited. It was that
was much quicker.
Yeah. So we got the result back in 2 weeks. But before that, actually, the hospital realized that she wasn't breathing effectively because of the low oxygen level in her blood, or high carbon dioxide level in her bloodstream.
Right.
She's
just not breathing hard enough.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's a whole different story when you start losing milestones, too. That gets everyone much more worried than low tone in and of itself.
And we were I think the hospital was very convinced that it was botulism because she was losing milestones, and so then we thought that it was botulism. But after she was given Baby Big, which is the medicine for botulism, she wasn't recovering as quickly as she was supposed to. And then the botulism test came back around the result really came back after the genetic test.
Okay.
So she was intubated. So we were doing all these neurological tests. We did like MRI, whatever you name it, we did it. But then they couldn't really find anything. She was negative for SMA, or actually my husband and I were negative for SMA because we were tested before we had her. So
you were?
Yeah, we did the Natera or Horizon test already.
Okay.
So then we knew that we were not which disease we were carriers of. But when the genetic test came out, the geneticist and actually the entire hospital staff kind of involved in our care, like including the neurologist, the pediatrician, everybody kind of told me to sit down into a comfortable place, and then I know. And then I was told that, my husband and I were told that, so my husband and I each have a mutation on this gene that's very critical in the body's metabolism, but we never knew because it's recessive. So both of our alleles have to be symptomatic for us to have the disease. And because we only have one pair, we never saw it in the family. And it's so rare that phenotypically, people who have symptoms of the disease, who have both alleles, there's only maybe 30 people in history that have had that.
My. Okay.
Yeah, I know. So we had that disease. So unfortunately, our first child didn't get it, but Alina got both of the mutations. So it actually causes mitochondrial depletion syndrome, but it's in the nuclear DNA. And then along with that, we were told that she had already surpassed her life expectancy.
Wow. I mean, what a crushing blow.
Yeah.
How old was she at this point?
4 months.
4 months.
Yeah.
4 months old.
I think what normally happens is that before you do come to the hospital, babies just probably pass in their sleep, and then it's a case of SIDS. So I think that if we hadn't come to the hospital, probably she would have passed during that week. But because she was intubated, she still lived. But we knew how the disease would progress, and her markers were still okay. She seemed fine. And it was really hard because she seemed fine, but we knew how she would deteriorate. She will eventually have seizures. Her organs will fail one by one. And we just knew what the disease would do to her. So we needed to make the decision of extubating her and letting her pass while she was not in pain.
Oh my. So hard. So hard. So what's the name of her disease?
It's called RRM2V.
RRM2V. Okay. That would be something I haven't heard of. RRM2V.
It's
and
B.
Not
Yes.
B? B?
RRM2V, yes.
Wow. That's just kind of a mouthful, isn't it? I just don't even know what to say, because what just tremendous change too. And then to think they were thinking about botulism, that they could do a treatment and things would be better, and then then oh no, this is really, really bad.
Yeah, it was really, really bad. It was terrible. And what was even worse was that one of the things that our geneticist told us is that because it's so rare that our variant had never been discovered in history, and because of that, our variant is classified as variant of uncertain significance rather than this mutation causes disease, and that's likely pathogenic or definitely pathogenic. But it was such a rare disease that they don't know what this does, right? But the symptoms of our daughter aligned 100% with the mitochondrial depletion syndrome. But even though the symptoms aligned perfectly, there was not enough scientific evidence to conclude deterministically that gene was causing the disease. So our geneticist told us you should do a muscle biopsy to confirm that. Otherwise, if you were to ever have a baby again, no labs would test for this disease. So we were recommended muscle biopsy. And then I talked to the surgeon, and it turns out the muscle biopsy requires 1 cubic centimeter of muscle tissue. And this is like a 4-month-old baby that is actually much, like less than 4 kilograms. Like she was so small and she was dying. So I wasn't going to extract 1 cubic centimeter of muscle tissue out of her just so that like it doesn't even cure her.
Right.
Like, that will just help us with our next child. So I wasn't going to do it. And then my husband, he's the type of person that needs a problem to solve, right? So he was just like running around, turning every stone. But after we basically got the diagnosis, I almost felt like I got closure because I knew there was something terribly wrong with her. And I actually knew that that was what it was when I heard it immediately.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, like what I was feeling was right. But my husband, he like just lost. He didn't have anything else to do, right? So I think he really started tackling this problem and how we can record our variant into the genetic dictionary.
Right.
And then my husband suggested autopsy biopsy. But the autopsy wouldn't be covered by insurance because it's not part of the clinical treatment. So then that's what, like, I didn't know how much it would cost. I didn't want to be stuck with $200,000 medical bill after her passing. But the hospital was super helpful and we were very aggressive. And we got other medical institutions involved to get involved with that. And then we were able to confirm it after she passed. But just to have to like even think about that while we already had a date for extubation, and I just had so few days left with her, and having to look into that, actually get in contact with institutions to talk about like, hey, this is a rare disease we don't have that much time. We need your word before she passes, because after she passes, there is 3-day window where you can do the autopsy. So anyway, that was just a terrible experience. But
that does sound like a terrible experience. I mean, just so stressful when you have just a short time before you were just enjoying your baby at home.
Yeah.
And now you are thinking about your baby's death and having to do tests and autopsies and things after that happens, plus the whole emotional side that you have to be dealing with and thinking about a funeral or celebration of life or whatever. All of those things, there's just too much.
Yeah. And I cannot imagine some people like you yourself, you lost a child to an accident, and we had all these miserable days in the hospital. And I guess it really comes with both sides where
it does.
We had time to prepare, but I actually asked myself this question: should I have just let her pass at home and then just not poke her? Like, she, procedures big and done being done to her. She was being poked all the time and intubated and all that, like stitched, and maybe I shouldn't have taken her to the hospital. But also, I
was just going to say, I think you needed to do everything that you could, though, because if you hadn't, I think doubts would have been worse. Like, well, what if we had gone to the hospital? What if we'd have done that? Would there have been a different outcome? So I think the fact that you could do everything is important.
And I agree, and I probably would have never forgiven myself. I don't know, but you can't
know for sure. But I mean, I always think to myself, I'm so glad that Eric was the one who maintained consciousness that whole time after our accident, and he was able to initiate CPR and do everything that he can do, because I know if anyone could have saved him, he would have been able to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And had it been Eric was unconscious and me trying to do that, I'm a general pediatrician. He's an anesthesiologist. I wouldn't have been able to do as good of a job. And I don't know that I trust myself to be able to do any of it on my own kid, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe I would have done better than I think. But for me to know in my mind that he had the best care he possibly could have had within a minute of that accident happening. So I think that's very similar in that I know the circumstances were far, far different, but you did absolutely everything
Yeah.
possibly could have.
We were
Yeah.
really annoying people in the hospital. We were just really pushy. We joined every round. We read all the research papers ever out there on mitochondrial depletion syndrome, and we were really pushy and annoying people. And I am so grateful for the hospital team because, they, even though we were the annoying people, they always respected us and really heard us. And just like the way they glance at the kids and then just the way that they touch and handle the kids, I didn't realize how important that is. And they already have a really hard job, but their job is just like so much more than their job description, right? This is like for kids like Alina, time at the hospital was really a significant portion of her life. Right. And she was met with compassion. She was met with love. She interacted with all these numerous people that basically showed her really the important things in life that we actually live for. Despite being in a really uncomfortable situation, like being poked and being in pain and everything. I do not regret going to the hospital because the time that she spent at the hospital is time that she got as a bonus and time that she really enjoyed, in my opinion.
Yeah. How long was she in the hospital?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah. So after the diagnosis, I couldn't have made this decision. My husband was we were in alignment, and my husband was also especially adamant that we're not going to wait until she starts deteriorating, until she is in pain, to let her pass in peace. So we actually set a date that was 1 week from the diagnosis date. So we just had a week with her to enjoy her, and then we let her pass.
Yeah. And that was probably smart to just have it.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Set up and just know.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's so hard to make for parents to make that decision. But
yes.
Yeah, but everyone at the hospital, all the nurses, all the doctors, everyone came to us and told us, I could see in their eyes that they really thought that we made the right decision. Because I'm sure they've seen parents who really wanted to spend more time with their kids.
Yeah. And hang on. Yeah.
Yeah. So that gave us a little bit of reassurance that we were doing the right thing.
Yeah. I think there's no doubt you were. I mean, you were really, truly thinking about her and her well-being and how she would be feeling the best. So, yeah. It was a very unselfish way to be. I think about that a lot when Andy died, but, you wonder, he had a bad spinal cord injury and he ended up having bleeding too. But you think to yourself, would I have wanted him to survive, to live with just this horrific spinal cord injury and brain damage and not have that quality of life?
Yeah.
For him, absolutely not. I wouldn't have wanted that for him. For him to live a life that had no quality of life. But selfishly, sometimes you think, but then I still would have him to hug, right? And yeah. And so then
I get it.
Then you think you might have wanted to. I mean, I didn't have the choice. There was ultimately no choice, but you wonder what choice you would make.
Well, I actually didn't have to wonder that because
you did.
I watched my family did that to my grandfather. So they kept him alive, and they kept him alive so well that it took him maybe a decade to come to his death. And I saw his body just deteriorate. We actually kept him at home. We kept him in our living room. And then we had a full-time nurse to take care of her and things like that. But him just losing the ability to turn over, and then a couple of years later losing ability to eat, and then he had a tube down him, and then he had to be turned every couple of hours because he was losing all the muscles. Anyway, I saw all that, so I was very adamant that I do not want to do that just in general to myself. Or so that was one.
I'm sure that had a lot to do with the decision too, didn't it?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and also we think that, we are so sad about our children leaving, but when I think about Alina, I feel like like, who am I to judge? Her life is sad because honestly, she did live a great life. And, everyone loved her and she was just wonderful. Her life was wonderful and her life was just filled with nothing but joy. And she like really saw the best of the world. I don't feel like I have the right to even have any pity for her because her life was great and she was so loved. But I mean, I feel bad for myself for not being able to touch her. And having to miss her. But for her, I don't have pity.
Because she had a good life, huh?
Yeah.
She had a good life.
Yeah.
Well, talk about this. So you had to make this decision and you're going to turn everything off in a week. And then that day came.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was that? What happened then?
So the doctor that was going to extubate her, all the hospital staff were very close to us. And I think he definitely lost sleep. And he definitely worked overtime to look into any other like explanation for this, if this is the right thing to do. And then also when he obviously, like us, concluded that this is the best thing to do. And I think he really researched what dosage should he use to not let her feel shortness of breath. And then he really worked hard. And I think he like overtime and things like that. And then we talked it through how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. We brought in our other daughter the day before and we sedated Alina and then we extubated her and she took her last breath within an hour and she died in my arms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still think about that. Like the time at the hospital, I replay in my head just constantly. So I just really want the healthcare workers to know how much I appreciate like the little things that they do, because for them it may be a moment, but for me it's going to be playing in my head forever.
Yes. You want it done right when it's going to be that last memory, right?
Yeah.
And as hard as it was that she took that last breath in your arms, you're so glad that she was in your arms when she took it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? You wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Or to be any other place.
Yeah.
So did they let you stay with her for a while then?
They did. But after she passed, my husband didn't want me to be in the same room. And then she was taken shortly after. And then, like all that.
You had a week kind of to prepare, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were as ready as we could be.
Right.
Yes.
Because I don't think anyone's ready, but you were as ready as you could be. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. We got a lot of guidance from the hospital and like how to talk to our other daughter and everything.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they have so much resources. It's crazy.
Not every hospital does. That's really fantastic. Because which hospital were you at?
Cedars-Sinai.
Oh, Cedars-Sinai. Okay.
Yeah.
You need to give them a shout out. That's great.
If I have to die in the hospital, that's where I'll die.
Okay.
Great hospital.
Good to know. Good to know. Oh. So talk about your grief journey and how that's been these last few months.
Yeah.
Because she died a few months ago now, right?
Yes. It's been 5 months now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's I'm a completely changed person. I think when we were made mothers, we were made to love our children more than we love ourselves. And then so basically my being was dependent on hers. And when she was gone, I lost all direction. I didn't know what to do with myself. And because of that, because I was so lost, I think it almost strangely made me go on autopilot and just live like I used to, as if nothing happened. She passed on a Friday and I went to work on Monday without even taking a day off because I didn't know what to do with myself because I was just destroyed. And sitting down and doing nothing versus working and being sad, I just didn't really know what to do with myself. So, and I feared that if I stopped motion, then I would just stop completely.
Yeah.
So I decided to kind of let my previous self, who's like always like tackling problems, who's always trying to improve. I do not feel that way anymore. I don't feel as driven as I used to be before, but I leaned into that previous self and let that person take over my life. And then I actually did everything I can do. I just like, you name it, I'm done. And like I immediately read a book on how to manage grief. And then it told me all the things that, I mean, it didn't really help, but it gave me guidelines on what has been done and what have worked on people, right? So I went to support group. I went on trips. I went on multiple trips, actually. I went on trips with friends. I went on trips with family. I went on multiple business trips. My husband and I decided to lean into our community. And we told everyone, we posted on social media, we made sure that everyone knew. We started fundraising and made plans to contribute to mitochondrial disease research throughout our lives. I started therapy. I worked out because I wanted to sleep at night. I worked out very rigorously. It did not really help. And then,
thought if you get your body worn out, then you maybe won't be able to sleep. Okay.
But I feel like
that's smart.
Yeah, but I don't know. In retrospect, it just made me more miserable a little bit. Yeah. And we started looking into IVF. We really tackled this problem of like getting this paper published about our case. And then just everything, like very active grief recovery journey on the outside. But even now, I'm trying to figure out who I am now.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of come to terms, like we were kind of running in parallel. Now I'm more comfortable with myself, the fact that I've changed. And I think I need to get to the new person I am over time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you talk about all that busyness, because I think a lot of times people do that and you're still kind of numb. There's so much pain and it's so awful. So I think your body can't handle all of that. Your mind can't handle all of that. So it just will kind of shut some things down and just let it just feel numb. And slowly, I kind of felt like over those first 6 months, you're still kind of in that period, that numbness started to go away and you started to be able to feel things a little bit more. So it'll be interesting even as a little more time goes on. Because even from 2 months ago is when you first emailed me. It was 2 months ago. And things have changed quite a bit, I'm sure.
Of course, a lot. Yeah. Yes, I'm really struggling. And I think people, it doesn't seem that way because I think people don't know what's going on inside. Even my husband, he doesn't know how much I'm in pain because I think he can't really see it and I don't really show it. And I still have a lot of trouble being honest emotionally. I'll be very honest I will say very transparent with how I feel and everything. But I will say everything I want, I am, but I cannot convey the emotion. I cannot be true to my emotions for some reason. And I guess that's still the numbness, the denial phase.
I think a little bit.
Yeah.
I think a little bit. It's still just there and it's still, you're still in, if God is some shock, you know? There's still just that shock that it's just not quite real yet in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from the outside, I think you're right. I think other people look at you from the outside and think, oh, Jae Hee's doing really well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they probably tell you that too. Like, oh, my word, you're doing really well. But they can't see how you're doing on the inside.
Right. It's crazy because it is. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think people, because I think Alina was also so young. Yeah. And I kind of get it. Like if I never had a child and if someone's child died in an infancy, then I'd be like, oh my God, that's really sad. But they're still young and they have time to make another child. Basically, like that's really ridiculous.
I know, it's so stupid, but yeah.
It is very stupid, but I can see how one would think that. But when, nowadays, of course, people say that to me, people.
Do they? Do they say, oh, you're young, you can have other kids?
Yes, they do. And a lot of people say, but, and then all the things that people say that really well-meaning people.
I know, but you still just
yeah.
want to punch them a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
really? You can't just replace a child. You can't.
Right. It's just so hard to explain why that is. But I really hard to try to look at the intention behind that.
Right.
Because, before I had this happen to me, I just don't even know that person. I don't know how clueless I could have been.
Right?
I don't know how
Probably we're just as stupid. We probably
so
were.
stupid and so arrogant and so entitled to all the non-problems that I had in my life. I didn't really know what a real problem was. I didn't know what it really meant to struggle. So in a way, I am actually a better person because of this. Even though, do I want this to happen to anybody? No. If I could go back in time, like, of course, like, I would do anything to stop this from happening. But we do have more forgiveness now. We do know the pain that people are going through. And when I walk down the street, I see strangers, and I know that we're not that different from each other. Like,
right. You feel more compassion, don't you? Yeah,
I do.
Yeah. I know. It's so interesting how that happens, but you really do. You really look at other people and you just wonder what they're going through in life.
I used to see people on the street who are living in the street, and then I would tell myself, hey, how do I pass them without letting them know that I noticed them? Or, like, just how do I pretend like I just like didn't think that we were that different? But after I was coming at rotating shifts with my husband in the hospital, I would be walking down the street and I would just be envious of everyone.
Yeah.
And I would just realize that, I had no idea what people are going through, and people have no idea what others are going through. So it's really, I've been assuming that my worldview has definitely changed. And Alina had, for me, definitely made the world into a better place with her being here.
So how did you start listening to the podcast?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to talk about that because so one of the trips that I made after Alina passed, I actually met someone new, and then we just hung out as if nothing happened. And then, I mean, she didn't know, right? So then we were just there as like a bunch of friends, and then we were just cracking jokes and whatever. And then later, after I came back from the trip, our mutual friend told me that, actually, the person that you met at the trip, her sister passed away before she was born. And she had grown up with grieving parents all her life. And she recommends this podcast to you without knowing that you were the person that we hung out with. So then, like, my mutual friend told her one of our friends lost a child, and then she recommended that podcast. But when we hung out, she didn't know it was me.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I went back and listened to the podcast, and I was like, okay, there's like so many episodes. And then I realized that she is not a grieving parent, but she listened to so many of these episodes, like almost a lot of them, in order to understand her parents. So I told myself, oh my God, I have another child, and the last thing I want is for her to grow up and seeing me sad and feeling like I was not enough to make my parents happy.
Yeah.
So I actually like really wanted to get her perspective, what it was like growing up with grieving parents. And then I actually reached out to her, asked her, can we talk? And then we talked. And when Alina passed away, I lived normally, and I was cracking jokes at work. I was doing everything, really. Like, I was living like nothing happened. But inside, I didn't really feel like living anymore. And I really lost the passion for life that I always had, that I thought I would always have. And I realized that was because I just had things going for me. I just had something to look forward to every single day, and I was just blessed. So that's why I had so much passion for life is not because I was just like better than other people. It's just because I was just fortunate. But after Alina passed away, I didn't really like see the point in living. I was living very hard, but I wasn't really enjoying it. And then she said that actually listening to the podcast, a lot of people said that.
Yeah.
And she said that she actually heard her parents say that too. And that really, really crushed her. That listening to her parents say that I don't even want to live anymore, that was really such a blow to her. And I could just feel how much she loves her parents. She doesn't want to change a thing about them. She doesn't even want her parents to not be sad. Like, she just accepts them as who they are, just as a whole. And she just loves them, and she just wants them to be happy. And that actually made me think about, like, I feel like I had just like really lost love for myself, and I almost felt like I don't deserve to be happy, like I don't deserve to live a great life. But listening to her, thinking that, you know, like, I feel like I need to keep living on because I have another child. For her, I need to live on, but I was like almost like kind of living as a shell. But knowing that that is not going to do her any good, like knowing that she actually, what she will want and what Alina will want is for me to be like actually happy and actually live my full life.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm fully present, and not just living for your other daughter, but living for yourself too.
Yeah. So only then I would be honoring my deceased daughter and my living daughter at the same time. So I realized that after that conversation.
Yeah.
And it almost gave me validation that, yes, I can be happy again. And I can live a great life again. So.
And you can feel sadness and joy at the same time. You don't have to feel guilt when you have periods of joy.
That is what I'm starting to learn.
You're starting to work towards, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny that you mentioned this because, you know, that is one of the first things that Eric was told was a nurse that he worked with. She had lost a sibling when growing up. And she said to him right away, I don't want to put a lot on you, but I just need to tell you this. You need to make sure your other kids know that they're enough. Because she and her brother, just from that time on, never felt like they were enough. Like it wasn't enough to have them. And it was always just, the focus was always on the part that was missing. And that was really, really hard on them growing up. And I think that was important for us to hear that early on, to make sure that the kids know that they are still enough. And we are very, very sad, and we miss Andy every single day, but they are enough too for us.
Yeah, right? As parents, we only think about our children, but we don't really think about how our children think of us.
Yeah.
How much our deceased children loved us, and how much our living children love us, and how important it is for them that we live great lives. We don't really think about that. If I think about my mother, you know, I love her so much and I want her to be happy more than anything in the world. But when I think of myself, I don't really give myself that type of grace. And I realized this because of, you know, my connection to this podcast. And I know that many people listening are on the same boat where they have lost the light in their lives and they don't feel like life is worth living anymore, but it is. And it is more than anything what your children want for you.
Mm-hmm. But you do have to come to that feeling on your own too. Don't you?
Yeah.
You have to have that realization. And it was your friend that gave you that realization that, wow, I really need to live. I need to live and feel joy again and feel moments of happiness and not always living in the pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long
Yeah.
have you been listening when you emailed me? Had you been listening for a little while or?
For a little while,
Yeah.
for maybe like a month or so. Yeah. Yeah. And in the beginning of my grief journey, I was completely directionless, and I was like, how do people live? Right? I'm like, what is going on? How do I just put one foot in front of the other day by day? This is just ridiculous. I don't think I will have the energy. I don't think I'll ever be happy again. And then I went to a grief support group because looking for, like, in desperation, I was like, okay, there must be people who are like who've been here for longer that will tell me one day you will be happy again. And then I went there and I saw that everyone was still suffering. So I was really desperately searching for the answer. Will I ever be happy again? And I think that strangely, the answer is yes. I do feel happy, although I still feel sad all the time. I am sad. There's a sadness that's always there with me, but it doesn't mean that I cannot feel happiness also. Very strange.
No, I know.
I
I exactly understand. I exactly understand what you mean. But for a time, it does seem like you shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to feel happiness again. And if you do start to even get glimpses of it, then the guilt comes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you are right that it is so important to be able to feel that happiness again.
Yeah. And it's also so important to be able to feel sad. Right now, I feel sad and happy at the same time because I'm able to talk about Alina. And people are so afraid to bring her up, and they don't want to make me sad. But I tell them, my husband doesn't even realize. And I even tell them that actually I'm sad all the time. And you're in a way giving me opportunities to be myself.
Yeah.
By bringing it up. And, I
love that.
Yeah.
I love that because now you gave me a chance to be my authentic self in front of you when I had been kind of putting on a mask, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's inspiring.
I just was on a bereaved moms weekend retreat, and I led a little discussion, and I showed them this paper. It was supposed to be printed. We couldn't get it printed. But anyway, it's this ball. It's called Grief, the Tangled Ball of Emotions. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's got this ball on it. And on the ball are written, I would say, 30 or 40 different emotions. And the exercise is that you say, how many of these emotions have you felt in the last week? And it's interesting because you start at the top, because I did this through my first support group I went to, and I started coloring. And then I colored another one, and then another one, and then another one. And then pretty soon I realized I could color like 2/3 of the words on the page because I felt so many different emotions all at the same time. I think it's a really effective exercise because you expect the sadness.
Yeah.
That is going to be there. But all of the other emotions that you end up feeling at the same time, you don't necessarily expect that. I certainly didn't. I certainly didn't expect to feel so many different things at the same time. And once you kind of acknowledge that you're feeling so much, it's better for you.
Yeah. And after she passed, I feel like I felt more emotion and honestly started connecting with the world on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Because when I connect with people now, I definitely connect them on a deeper level, and they show me facades of them that I had not known before. And honestly, people are so compassionate, and people have really been there for us. And it just opened the door to how much gratitude I should have for this life, and how we are all just connected to each other. We are just suffering in this world together.
Much deeper, more meaningful relationships.
Yeah, and more varied Yeah, it's just more complex. So in a way, I realized that the world is actually a better place without as much willpower to enjoy that. But I don't know how to describe that. So that's kind of how I feel right now.
Yeah. I mean, really, relationships are just much deeper and less shallow. And now when you are in a situation where you're just with acquaintances and they want to only have this very shallow kind of conversation, I just don't even want that. I mean, I just don't.
Yeah.
We have deep, meaningful conversation, or I can find someone that I can have that with. But the superficial stuff is not as okay with me anymore.
Life is too short to, if I'm gonna live, despite all this, if I'm going to be here for the short amount of time, then I want to really live. And I've become so much bolder, and I'm just like, I don't care. It doesn't matter anyway. Nothing matters. So I've been much bolder and just more brave. And also, you know, coming up on this podcast, you mentioned that a lot of people are nervous. I'm nervous too, but you know, I just stopped taking myself so seriously. Like, who cares if I mess up and people think I'm a terrible conversationalist? It doesn't matter. Like, I don't matter.
Yeah, you know, I love that. It was before we started recording. I just have to share this story because I said, some people are really nervous. That's understandable. Almost no one's been on a podcast before, and it's going to go great. And Jae Hee said, you know, and if it isn't good and somebody doesn't like it, then they just listen to one bad conversation if they don't like me. And I was like, okay, yep.
Yeah, it's just you just start having so much forgiveness, right? And then this one time, I recently started growing a lot of gray hair because after childbirth, it grows back, but because I also went through the grief journey, everything grew back gray. And then I needed to get highlights. And then this woman, you know, messed up my hair and then dyed my hair black. And I was like, you know what? It's just hair.
Yeah, whatever.
It's not what I wanted, but it's dyed. So, you know, whatever. You worked hard. I like you. And I just walked out of the salon. It just doesn't matter.
I know. There are so many things that, like, people apologize for it now, too. And you're like, it's okay. It's really not a big deal. It doesn't matter to me. So I love that. So by the way, I think you've been a great conversationalist. So I don't think anyone is going to listen to this and feel at all disappointed, like they wasted an hour of their life listening to you. So listening to us, I should say. No, I think it's been lovely. Are there any other kind of parting words that you wanted to say?
We will be happy again.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll be happy again. We will be happy again. And
we are,
you know
actually.
And are, right. And I was going to say that too. And we already are. And that doesn't mean you need to be happy all the time, right? That's the other thing too. You're going to feel things all the time. And as birthdays come and go, you will have happiness and you will have sadness.
Yeah.
And that is all okay. We'll be just feeling a lot of things all at the same time. But certainly when that third birthday comes along, it will be a great day. But will you have some sadness because Alina's not there too? Of course you will. Of course you will. And that's totally understandable.
Yeah, and I'm happy every day because Alina was here with us.
Yes. And you cherish every day. And like you said, she had a wonderful life. It was a lot shorter than the life you wanted her to have.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful life.
And she doesn't know it was too short.
No.
Yeah, she doesn't know. I'm the only person that imagined us growing old together. She didn't imagine that.
No.
I feel bad for myself, but really not for her.
Yes, not for her. Well, thank you so much for sharing your whole family with us today.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.